Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. We want to thank you for joining us for this next level webinar titled Utilizing Power Pivot to Drive Big Data. This webinar is going to be presented by one of our instructors, Dawn Hunter. My name is Brian Duncan. I'll be your MC for this event. Just the first piece of business is if you do have any questions as the presentation is going, please feel free to put those in the chat box in the bottom right corner. And Dawn will be able to get to those as they come in. So this webinar is presented by New Horizons Computer Learning Centers. Dawn, if you could hit next slide. So a little bit about New Horizons. We're a worldwide training provider with flexible learning solutions covering a broad spectrum of topics. We have 2,100 classrooms, 2,400 instructors in over 56 countries, and 3 million student days of training per year. We offer flexible integrated learning solutions, whether that be instructor-led training, online live virtual training, or group training customizable for your organization. So that's just a little bit about us. And now I would like to introduce Dawn, who will be doing the presentation for you. And there she is.
Hi, so I'm Dawn Hunter. Thank you, Brian. I'll be your webinar host for today to talk about PowerPivot. I'm an applications trainer out here in Memphis, Tennessee, so welcome. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about what PowerPivot is, how you get information into PowerPivot, how to manipulate that data, and then using something called calculated columns. For this webinar, I welcome, of course, everyone who's here already. This class or this webinar is geared toward those people who already have experience in both Excel pivot tables and in database software. And if you're just out there looking for an efficient way to manipulate your data, I believe that PowerPivot will be it for you. So today you'll get that introduction to PowerPivot, see how data is manipulated inside of PowerPivot, and to get alternatives to using SQL or Access for your business intelligence. I hope you guys are ready for this. This is going to be extraordinary. All right, so let's take a look. We'll take a look first at actually getting materials into PowerPivot. So you may have information that's stored out there in SQL or in Access or even in text files. And we want to get our data into Excel because, of course, Excel is friendly. And here's the thing about PowerPivot. PowerPivot allows you to bring in information from multiple data sources. So that SQL, once again, even Excel files, large Excel files you can pull into PowerPivot, and also text files and databases. So you can bring that information into one area inside of Excel and manipulate that data through pivot tables. All right, so let's get started. We'll take a look at how to get information into PowerPivot first. Notice I'm inside of a workbook inside of Excel, and I have this new ribbon that's called the PowerPivot ribbon. Now, if you have not seen this before, in 2010, PowerPivot is a free add-in. You'll have to go out to the office.com website and grab PowerPivot from there to download it to your computer. Luckily, in 2013 and in 2016, it has been incorporated into the normal workings of Excel, and you can actually get it from your File tab, Options, and then your add-ins will have a COM area. Once you use that drop down and choose COM add-ins, you could choose Go. Once you see the Power Pivot for Excel, make sure it's checked, and then OK. That will install your Power Pivot ribbon. So I have this blank workbook, and I have files that are in text form. I have also files that are in database forms. I want to pull those into my PowerPivot container. Notice here on your PowerPivot ribbon in the launch group, you have this button for your PowerPivot window. This actually gets you out of the Excel workbook and into working inside of PowerPivot. Once you open up PowerPivot, notice it's blank right now, just because we don't have anything in it yet. We're going to pull in our information. You'll notice that everything will look familiar to you. You have ribbons at the top. So on this home ribbon, we're going to tell it to get external data. The first thing that we'll bring over will be a database. So here, I'm going to choose from database. Notice that you have some options here. You can pull information in from SQL or from Access. I'm going to go ahead and choose from Access. PowerPivot will open up this nice little table import wizard, and I always tell people whenever you see the word wizard, that's Excel making your life a whole lot easier. So all you have to do is kind of fill in the questions, and it will pull the data in for you. Here, we're going to browse for our database, have it nice and easy. Database is called Customer Order. Should you have any passwords, usernames, or passwords for security purposes on your database, you would be able to drop that information in so that that database can still remain secure. I'm going to go ahead and hit my Next button. Now, here's where it gets to be fun. You have two options here on how to import your data. You can select from a list of the tables, just checking a box and saying, hey, I want this table and this table. Or you can write a query that will specify the data that you want to import. That does require you to know SQL. If you use this top option, you will not need to know SQL. I'm going to go ahead and choose Next. So notice it has listed out all three tables that are inside of that Access database. I'm going to check the box just for two of them. I just want to pull in those two. I can change the names here. I'll show you where that pops up. I'll leave it the same right now, and I'll show you those names in just a moment. And then all you have to do is finish. Once I click the Finish button, PowerPivot tells you that you are a success. And your customer table came over with just 6 rows. These are small tables. This transport table came over with 191 rows. Once I hit that Close button, I have 2 tables now inside of PowerPivot. My customer table and the transport table. That is from an Excel database. Now, just to add to this, I'm going to bring in another file, and this one is a text file. This one's a text file. It's a tab delimited file. Again, I can go here, Home ribbon, Get external data, and From text. From text. Click on that. Again, you get the wizard. We get to tell it where the file is. So I'm going to again choose the Browse button. Order Details is my file. Notice it pulls it in this big gobbledygook of information. It doesn't look right, and that is because right now it's looking for a comma-separated set of data. We actually have a tab-delimited set of data, so we're going to use the drop-down. Choose that to Tabs, and check the box for Use First Row as column headers. Our data should look a lot better now. And watch this. I'm going to tell it to finish. It just imported 60,000 rows, a little over 60,000 rows into PowerPivot. Once I close this, all of my data is now inside of PowerPivot. So this just goes to show, regardless of the different formats that this information, your big data, may be in, you can bring them all into one place inside of PowerPivot. Are there any questions on the importing of data? Great. The next thing that we'll do is we'll take a look at creating relationships between our tables. So let's say, for example, you've imported data into PowerPivot, and the whole purpose of bringing it all into into PowerPivot is to be able to connect them. So you have like terms from table to table, and you're going to connect those tables using a specific column so that you can use both of those tables or multiple tables inside of a pivot table. We're going to go back here to the PowerPivot ribbon and launch the PowerPivot window. Notice here we have 4 different tables: our customer order table, sales invoice table, transport charges, and our packing charges. What we'll do is we'll create a relationship to identify the invoices for a customer. So that means I'll have to use the sales invoice table as well as the customer order table, connecting them by that customer order number. So this may put you in a mind of relational databases inside of Access. Really easy to do, really easy to create your relationships. If I go to the Design ribbon in our Relationships group, I can create a relationship here. I have my sales invoice table selected using the customer order column. My lookup table is going to be my customer order table, and it'll automatically find the matching column. I'm going to create the relationship. Once you create the relationship, PowerPivot will put small icons on the column titles. Notice as I'm hovering over that icon, it'll tell me that there is a relationship from customer order is related to the customer order column in the customer order table. All right, we'll build one more relationship, and we'll build that relationship between our sales invoice table and our transport charges table. So if I look at transport charges, notice it only has the invoice number there, so we're going to connect them by invoice number. I'm going to create the relationship. Sales invoice is our table, and I'm going to use this invoice number. Our related lookup table will be transport charges, and again, it automatically matches. And we have our table we're going to create. Our relationships are built. Cool place to manage your relationships. You have a little button there, Manage Relationships. You can take a look at all of the relationships that are built inside of your PowerPivot window. You can edit your relationships here, and should a relationship become obsolete, you can delete those relationships. Now remember, the main purpose of using those relationships is to integrate multiple tables into a pivot table or a pivot chart. Are there any questions here about relationships?
There's one question, Don. The question is, do the fields
Great.
have
I'll move on to actually getting your reporting, actually putting these into pivot tables and using something called calculated columns. All right, once again, I'm inside of a blank workbook. Remember, the reason why this workbook is blank is simply because we have not manipulated any data from PowerPivot inside of this workbook. This is where we will have the opportunity to do that. I'm going to go to the PowerPivot ribbon and launch my PowerPivot window. So if you take a look, I have 3 tables: the invoices table, a product list table, and a salesperson list table. You notice that there are little icons that let me know there are relationships built between these tables. If I take a peek at my Manage Relationships button, I'll see that salesperson name from our invoices is connected to the salesperson list, as well as invoices by product name to the product list. Now, in order to actually do my reporting here, I am just going to run a regular pivot table. On that home ribbon in the reports group, I'm going to click on the top half of the pivot table button. Notice it brings me back to Excel. It brings me back into the same workbook, but onto the actual sheets, the worksheets. I'm going to tell it to put this pivot table on the existing worksheet and choose OK. This, if you deal with pivot tables already, this should look very, very familiar to you, with the exception that we have 3 tables over here now. We have our invoices table, our product list table, as well as our salesperson list. We have an area for our slicers here, report filter, column labels, row labels, and values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to pull information from multiple tables into one pivot table. So here's what I'll do. I'll grab product name and drop it into my row labels. That comes from the product list. I'm going to take salesperson and drop it into my column labels. And then I'll take their sales and drop it into the values. And notice now, from 2 different tables, I have pulled in information. Now, if I wanted to break this down just a bit, let's say that I need to filter this by year. When I go back to PowerPivot, I don't necessarily have a column of information that's broken out by year. I do have dates, but I don't have year specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in what's called a calculated column. I'm going to use a formula to pull the year out of each one of these invoice dates. So all I have to do to add in that calculated column is click here on Add Column. As soon as I do that, my formula bar releases. It's ready for me to type into. I'm going to use what's called the year function. Notice the syntax requires me to show it the date that's inside of the invoice date. Notice I clicked on just the column in order to pull in that full invoice date. I'm going to close my parentheses and press enter. Now for my entire set of data, I have corresponding years for each one of these records. I'm going to change that column name to year. As I switch back to Excel, to my workbook, notice right over here in my PowerPivot field list, it says that my data was modified. When I refresh this, notice now I have a column for the year. I'm going to take that year and drop that into my slicers horizontal, which means it'll drop a slicer area at the top of my screen. And I can now use this slicer in order to choose which year of information I want to look at. Questions?
Remember, if you...
All right. Well, I thank you guys very much for hanging out with me today and getting a peek at PowerPivot.
Dawn, can you hear me?
Remember, your next steps are to contact your New Horizons Computer Learning Center in order to enroll in Microsoft Excel PowerPivot. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I do see your questions come in. I think Dawn might not be able to hear me. So what I'll do is I'll take these questions down. I have the person's name and information. I will email her the questions and have those responses sent to you in regards to your answers. Once again, sorry about that. I do want to thank Dawn for her time, as well as thank all of you for taking your time to join us in this webinar. I hope that you came away with a few new points of stuff that you can utilize on your day-to-day basis. And if you have any questions, my email is in the invite to you. Please feel free to send me those questions, and I'll follow up with Dawn on these questions that we have here. Once again, thank you guys for your time, and we look forward to you joining another webinar sometime soon.